Okay, so what are the editors looking for? And we're going to look at all these different methodologies, right? So the editors are looking for original, citable research, right, from you that makes a contribution. So you've got to understand the motivation behind the editors, and I can tell you what page it's on. Page 338. Page 338. So how does the editor get rewarded? How do they get prestige out of being an editor? Well, you've got to think about that, right? If you're going to go fishing, you want to know what the fish are looking for, right? If you go fishing and you don't know what the fish are looking for, you don't understand the fish, you're not going to catch the fish. Yeah? If you go hunting for wild boar, wild pigs, you don't understand how wild pigs behave and what they're looking for, you're not going to find a wild pig. So what are the editors? How do they get rewarded for being an editor? Well, they get rewarded for being an editor the higher the impact factor of the journal. And that depends on the citations of the papers. And it really depends on the recent papers. So they're only as good as the papers they've had in the last couple of years, right? So your paper has to cite other literature, right? It has to cite. If you're not citing the papers in the editor's journal, you're not understanding, how to fish, how to hunt for boar. You're not understanding what they're looking for. They're not going to tell you you've got to cite, but that's what they're looking for. You've got to cite their journal and the sister journals. And in addition, your work has got to be citable. It's got to be work that other people want to cite. So what is original citable research that makes a contribution? Well, it's got to have a really good research question. It's got to have, up-to-date, state-of-the-art methodology. Yeah, but that's only part of it, right? Then it's got to be really polished. So you've got the research idea, you collect the data, you get the results, and you write it up. But you're really only 10% of the way there. The other 90% is really polishing this paper, making it so the editor can't refuse it. You really got a hook. Okay, this is good. It's citing a lot of the literature that I needed citing, and it's got to get a lot of citations itself. So you draw them in. So this well-polished workshop is, a big thing, and it might take you quite a bit of time. It might take you longer than actually writing the paper, but now you're polishing it. And thinking about the best way to frame it that the editor might like. And, make sure that you've got the up-to-date references because they get rewarded, by the higher the impact factor. And so that depends on the recent citations. So here's a Dropbox of my national PhD course. I'm teaching that course July 14th to 17th, and you're welcome to join in. Just send Duke a message saying you'd like to do Tom's national PhD course on the research methodologies. And what you'll do, what you'll get access to, free of course, is all the videos, the notes, the readings, everything. So if you wanted to do the course, I think it's intensive, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th of July, and 3 to 5 Sydney time, which is 12 to 3 Vietnamese time. And you're welcome to one coming in July? Yep. The last one? No, the one coming. So they're welcome to do it. You're welcome to do it. It's free. I teach it pro bono for all the PhD students in Australia and New Zealand. So but you're welcome to do it online. Okay, you can do it here. There'll be 12 to 3 Vietnam time. So if you want to do it, just let Duke know, and there's no formal enrollment. I'll just add you to the distribution list. So engage in the research conversation, right? So it's very important to pay respect to the people that come before you. So, for example, in the principal agent models, you know, one of the seminal paper was Jensen and Meckling in 1976. But you can't write your paper and pretend that Jensen and Meckling wrote their paper in 1976 and that yours is the next paper, right? You just can't do that because it's insulting to all the people that are working in that area, yeah, and have published recently. And, you know, the editor is going to send your paper to the people in the principal agent area that have published recently. So when they see your paper, and all you're doing is citing Jensen and Meckling in 1976, and then it's your paper, and you haven't mentioned any of their, with what they believe is fantastic work, outstanding work, they're not going to be very pleased, right? So the odds are you're just going to get rejected, right? So you've got second thing, you've got to understand what the referees, just like the fish, just like the boar, the referees want to get their work cited, right? They can't tell you to cite their work. Some people do, but they get in trouble. You should be aware of the literature in your area and cite those people. One, that's good for the editor, he gets current cites, and two, the referees won't like it if you don't cite their work, right? So that is really important. If you don't cite them, you're off to a very rocky start in your publication endeavors. So qualitative research, you've got to be very clear to say what your theoretical perspective is. You can also have a section on the researcher as instrument. If you've worked in the investment banking industry for many years and you're doing a study on investment banking, your statement as, you know, what you bring to it as, you know, using your lived experience as a researcher, as an investment banker is important. For every, you know, you've got to be clear what your research question is, and you've got to tie your interview questions to the research questions. Triangulation is really important. It's not just data triangulation, which is interviews, observations, document. It's also participant triangulation. You know, for example, investors, financial planners, regulators. Yeah, and finally, there's researcher triangulation, right? So you can help in terms, you know, you can triangulate in all aspects of the paper, but it's particularly important when you're going from, you're figuring out what the themes are, the initial themes, secondary themes, final themes, right? Triangulation is really important there. And, you know, the conclusion, yeah, the conclusions, your findings should be tied to the sources, the documents, the interview, the observation, the focus group is there, if there is, and the different memos. Yeah? So, and Farrow and Gephardt really do a good job of telling you what you need to, how you're best able to write it up. So, survey research, remember 80-20 rule, you measure 4 times and cut once. You know, getting the questions right, it can be difficult, and that paper by Sarah Donnaclair, just about something simple about how comfortable was your bed. You can see that there was a lot of, you know, lot involved in that. You know, scales, you know, if you want to measure something like financial literacy, you just can't ask one question about how financial literate are you. You know, you essentially got to use a tried and true scale. Then you combine the answers to the questions and come up with a finding of how financially literate they are. Response bias, we said that can be a big deal. If you want sending a survey to the general community, you're probably only going to get 10% response. So if you want 1,000 responses, you need to send out 10,000. How then do you take account of, this response bias? Well, we talked about Heckman's sample selection bias. And of course, the big one that editors are all looking for is now the common method variance. So you've got to think in advance. The order of the responses and the questions, the order of the questions themselves, getting the explanatory variables from one source and the outcome variables from another source. So there's plenty of good papers there to look at. Literature review we didn't cover, but there's some interesting stuff there. Experiments. So, use of students as subjects, the low stakes, right? But we saw, very convincing arguments that students are homogenous across the world. Students are very smart, can understand what you're getting at in an experiment quickly. Also, $50 Australia is like an hour, but it was like a month's salary in Indonesia. But the experiments in both countries yielded similar outcomes. So, we think that the experimental results using students and the stakes we use are applicable in the real world. Anchoring is really important, right? And we can see how that can affect, your whole retirement income, where the US taking the default of government bond and Australia taking the default of investing in the market. And order effects make a difference, right? The order of the responses to the questions, you'll get a different outcome for an online survey versus a telephone survey. So, and for example, another thing is if you do the experiment with the 2 hours sleeping followed by 10, you might get different results if you'd run a 10 hours sleep followed by 2. And so there's some useful references. And capital market studies, it's all about causality here, right? The editors, are going to pull you up on the endogeneity issue, right? So you should have tested for endogeneity. If you have instruments, you've got to show that they satisfy the properties, that they're correlated with the potential explanatory variable, they're uncorrelated with the error. Definitely don't do two-stage least squares, do GMMIV, but best to do an actual experiment using diff and diff. That's referred to as reduced form. But then they want you, now that you've shown causation, to fit a theoretical model, right? And we gave you instances of the different theoretical models. And, they're also concerned that your standard errors are robust. So best to use, if you're doing, maximum likelihood, OLS, you can just tick the box for robust standard errors, which will give you GMM standard errors rather than maximum likelihood standard errors. So we made it. Oh, we're a little bit over. Sorry, Duke.
It's okay. I think that this is the most important thing. It sums up down.
But it sums up, But we could have just done this, but it wouldn't have meant so much if we hadn't gone through all of the research methodologies.
No, did I have this version, Tom?
Yes.
I mean, this version only, the one that couple of pages.
Yep.
Last part.
Yep. Page 338.
Oh, I thought that is something that you just write.
No. You sent me the link. You sent me the online link, and it was a link to this book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is what I just went through was page 338.
I mean the work document that you just came from. Work document.
Yeah, it's on page 338. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So 338, the audience is on the slide.
338. That's what we. Yep, that's what we just went through. Communication can be very difficult.
Sorry, I'm texting page 338.
Yeah. So the version, you sent me the online book, and that's what I'll be giving that page numbers from that all the time. So everything I've done today is in the online book under those pages. And this last one was 338. Yeah. And this last one is 338. So, yeah. The Word document for what the editors want.
We finish all the content.
Everything's finished.
All right, so maybe we open the floor for a couple minutes.
Of course, of course.
Q&A.
And we could do some photos too, if you want.
Yes, so, any questions, any Q&A before we do the photo? Or book signing, if anyone want to get the book. I know who have book already, right? I know that, Dr. Try have one and one here. All right, yeah. So, I got a few copy left if you want to get the book. Now, any questions? No? Yes, please.
Thank you for your sharing. I have only one question because you put a question about the distribution, the percentage of the budget, 30 billion US dollar. And I wonder about the purpose, why you put this question.
So the purpose was group thinking versus individual thinking. So that's why those 4 people down the front that did the individuals, what they said, what the items that should be spent and how much. And if you see, they had 100% on just one thing, infrastructure, and then they had a lot more things than the groups, and with like small amounts, like 10%. So the variance from the individuals was much larger than the variance from the group. The group thinking was very narrow and focused, whereas the individuals had a very wide scope, including the allocations, right? Because that observation of 100% just on infrastructure really blows up the variance for the individuals. So it tells you a little bit, the experiment is not about what to fix in Vietnam, but that was interesting. The experiment is what outcomes would you get from a group versus what outcomes would you get from an individual.
So you want to highlight the differences when you do.
It's not really about the problem, right? I could have given you any problem. I gave you something I thought might be interesting to you, but what I wanted to test was, will there be differences between outcomes from group thinking versus outcomes from individual thinking? Yeah.
So the experiment grows.
So it wasn't really about what needs to be fixed in Vietnam or the weights. It was more about, what difference in expected value of the outcome and the variance of the outcomes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So what motivated me was one of the papers in the experimental was talking about whether 2 investors were better than 1. So it's just one individual investing versus 2 or more investing. What was better? Yeah. There's literature that says if you have, are 2 economists better than 1? And like in forecasting GDP and inflation, turns out it's not. 2 economists aren't better than 1. Yes. Where's the microphone? Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. I have a question. I used to work with the social projects, and there are a lot of very rich story about the different case study in the society. When I joined the academic area, I feel a little bit challenging to bring the rich information from the social project or the result into the academic research. And I just wonder how the editor, they value the information coming from the project.
So I think you're talking about case study research, and that's really fits well under qualitative, right? Qualitative research. So in this case study, there could be lots of individuals that you can talk to, right? So that's a lot of interviews. And, case study is a form of qualitative research. So you'd have to be clear about what your research question was. But yeah, you do uncover rich and deep meaning and understanding. Yeah. So that sounds like it would be ideal for a qualitative research.
The different journal highlight top tier journal, they validate or they consider the value coming from those report.
Definitely. So, for example, an A-star journal on Australian business teams is AAAJ, Accounting, Auditing, Accountability Journal, and they publish almost exclusively qualitative. They don't do capital market studies at all. And as I said, for my book on qualitative research, the editors of the Journal of Finance and presidents of the American said that now we need to be doing qualitative research, and they've started doing qualitative research. So it's it's really becoming accepted in all the top journals. Is there anyone on Zoom that wants to ask a question? We could check that.
Give me a second. No,
Okay.
it's just my message to them.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. What time for the last question? Anyone? Lucky last? If not, may I say last few words?
Of course.
Okay. So on behalf of Professor Tom Smith from Macquarie University, the whole team at Knowledge Bridge Research Institute, we would like to say sincerely thank you to the Economics University of Da Nang University, who have sponsored and host this workshop. Right. Without the support from the DEU, Da Nang Economic University, the workshop cannot happen. And we hope that, even we make the workshop, just half day, but with the material that has been, intensively and carefully written by Professor Tom Smith, as well as translated into Vietnamese by K-Berry team. This material, the ebook that you have already in your link, as well as a couple of copies here, they will be kind of your Bible or something that you will put together with you anywhere you go. Even if you just have like, half hours of time traveling on the train, waiting in the airport, right? You don't need to read every single word there, but you just go to the back of the book, right? And they have, what we have is the table of content. So the book have 8 chapters with 8 topics, yeah? And they're all, practical topics. Each topic, each chapter is one of what we call is the research methods. And also there are a lot of what we call appendices here. And some of them actually, we also include the link of the papers that Professor Tom Smith have recommended, right? So as you can see that the page 338, yeah? They got all the summary of what the auditors, what the editors are looking for, right? So I hope that it is my Bible. So I hope this is my research Bible, and I hope that this is or will also be your research Bible, right? Thank you very much. And it may be time for, a round of applause to say congratulations to all of us who have completed the program today. Time for a quick photo, and then, you all can have, a lunch. Yeah. All right, Tom, please.
So Duke does a fantastic job running Knowledge Bridge. She does it, pro bono, and we come along and do these things pro bono. So, she's a very great inspiration to everyone. I was hoping when you were going to spend the money, when you did education, I was hoping that you'd put aside 500 million for the establishment of Knowledge Bridge University with Duke as the president. So the recommended answer was, to write 500 million for the establishment of Knowledge Bridge University. So you want to do books and photos, or what do you want to do?
They want the group photo.
Okay.
Yeah. So they just want to show the slide. Okay. Right. Các chị học viên mình lên đây để chụp hình ảnh. Rồi, các anh chị online nếu có thể open cho camera